Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast, the show where we uncover what really creates freedom in life and business, and we'll explore stories of those who've learned how to build wealth with purpose.
Welcome back to the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Today, I'm joined by Trent Benedetti, founder of Benedetti Financial and Benedetti & Associates CPA. Trent is a man who's worn many hats over the years, a CPA, a CFP, investment advisor. He's helped thousands of families and business owners stand strong in uncertain times using timeless strategies and a deep wealth of experience. Trent, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Great. Appreciate you being here. Now, Trent, can you share a little bit more about who you are and what kind of your work looks like? What is it that you do today?
Yeah, so I'll fast forward through a 40 plus career just to where we're at today. So I am, as you mentioned, a CPA, certified public accountant. So I help people, a lot of small business owners, but also a lot of retirees and real estate investors. I would say retirees, real estate investors, and business owners are, small business, I would call them, maybe 25 or less employees. Help them navigate their tax rules. I help them implement the strategies that will give them the most tax benefits and most cash flow. And once we understand that, I'm not after a high volume tax practice. If you're coming to me just to get your taxes done every year and that's it, I'm probably not your best CPA for you, because the bigger part of what I think I do is I take that tax strategy, help you implement the maximum cash flow you can get, and then look at what you're going to do with that cash. And so someday we all have to take our income, unless we have one of those generic pension plans, which are not offered that often anymore in the United States, but these pension plans that'll give you a certain paycheck for the rest of your life after you worked there for 40 years and retire at age 65. So that's not the norm anymore. The norm now is people need to think of ways to create a wealth, whether it's through rentals or equity investments in mutual funds or other ideas that they have that are more passive in nature, that create income when they're not in their full working life or retired. So the Benedetti financial side of my business, my daughter Christy Benedetti and I run a investment advisory practice, and we help our clients manage and implement pension plans, implement their retirement plans. But also, we're one of the few advisors out there that work with self-directed pension plans, help them perhaps invest in a pension plan that has real estate investments in it, or maybe crypto, or some other. Some of my clients they're in the private note market. It's kind of a cottage industry where people are loaning money out for projects that people have that maybe the banks aren't quite as flexible as they need to be. So our clients that have self-directed pension plans are also getting very fulfilled, and maybe it's a small career for them to manage that stuff, but it's also not a full-time job. And so we're pretty flexible on how we help our clients build their wealth. But I think that's the bigger picture of our practice. Save on taxes, create your cash flow from your operations, we call them your jobs or your self-employed income, and then build up your passive income, your holdings, we call that, and then utilize that wealth building to someday give you financial peace, I like to call it.
No, that's a great point. And again, what I'm hearing you that you work a little bit outside of that traditional investment advice that exists out there, because especially for high net worth individuals, there are a lot more different options. And some of those options are better suited for them than kind of the traditional way of investing. So
yes, it's true that for instance, I have a number of clients. I mentioned I'm involved in real estate. That's their specialty. They love real estate, and so I help them figure out how to use the best tax strategy vehicle for them. In fact, in my book, which I know we'll get into later, I have a whole strategy using shareholder remainder trust to hold real estate in it, perhaps sell some real estate with no tax gains to you, and then utilize the cash out of that in a very sophisticated strategy to build up some more of your real estate empire.
Yeah. Well, you've been serving families and businesses owners, for over 4 decades. What was the first thing that kind of pulled you towards the accounting, tax, and financial advising?
Okay, so now I'll go back 40 plus years. So I was going to be a biology teacher, because my dad was a high school teacher, and I was taking these science classes, just struggling in college, barely getting a C. And then my wife, who was a bookkeeper when I met her, she convinced me to take an accounting class with her at the local community college in the Los Angeles area. So we took that class together. I said, that's great. My wife's a bookkeeper. She'll help me. So this was like accounting 101. And it turned out that I was teaching her. I got an A in this class, and it's like everything just clicked in my brain. It's like, oh my God, God created me not to be a biology teacher. This stuff's like easy for me. The CPA's teaching us this stuff, and I got it all. So I said, after that class, I switched my major to accounting. And then while I was in that accounting major, I loved my finance classes. So that's where that little seed came from. I think I just had a great finance teachers. And so while I was working on my accounting degree, I was also getting this emphasis in finance. So when I got out of college, I never really wanted to be just that accounting tax preparer by himself. I always had that seed planted in my mind that I needed to get my securities licenses and work towards helping people with this kind of dream I had about getting finances. Now, I'll step back a thought, and it's also in my book. I talk about this. I had a stockbroker when I first moved to Santa Maria, California, which is up near the Santa Barbara area, a great place to raise a family. And I lost $5,000 on my first investment. I told him to put me in a risky investment that would give me high reward. And so what he did is he bought one company, one gold mining stock in Alaska. So what are the odds that I'm going to lose all that? Probably a lot. So when you're talking about risk, people think if they put their money in the S&P 500 that's risky. Well, you're not going to have 500 companies go bankrupt. But in my case, it's likely that one company would go bankrupt. So after I lost that $5,000 back in 1980, early 80s, I decided, no, I need to learn how this finance thing works. And I need to bypass the stockbroker model and work myself with my clients on their investment models. And so that negative experience, along with my love for finance and accounting, is what drove me to get those licenses. And as you mentioned, today I have the Certified Financial Planner's license and the Registered Investment Advisor Company with Benedetti Financial and the CPA license. So we work as a team and a tandem on the way we implement these strategies with our clients.
Yeah. I love that story, from biology teacher to a bean counter, and I don't want to go and use that phrase, but to that, it's kind of interesting. I mean, there is a lot of numbers in nature and everything, and really when you look at it, everything's an equation, everything's there. But it's just interesting that for you, when you kind of went into that accounting class, that everything became clear for you. And I always tell people there's two important dates in all of our lives, and one of them is the day you're born. And the other one, when you find out why you were born or what is your purpose. And I think this is, perfect for you. You kind of find out your purpose when you took that class in accounting. So that's a great story. Now,
yeah, you're right. In fact, even before this podcast started, I had a young woman in here that her and her husband they're building up their wealth and they're working on strategies. And so I'm kind of fortunate in my 40 plus years, because now I can look back at clients that have built the wealth, become multimillionaires, even billionaires. I can look back at what they did. So I have a lot of role models and examples in my own practice that I now feel like I have to share that with other people and see how it fits into their model. So I think a lot of advisors just have their products in mind, how they're going to get this return for a client. And I try to move away from the return model. And first, let's talk about what are your goals, where you're headed, what do you want to do in life? And so she shared with me, this woman shared, well, in 4 years, I'd like to have enough passive income where I don't have to do this business anymore. And great. Now we have a goal in mind, like you said. So once we figure out what we want to do, I mean, if you can figure it out younger in life, great. It's not everybody's as fortunate as I was in terms of being able to develop this passion that it doesn't feel like you're going to work every day. But once you can figure that out, or even like my client, maybe she doesn't like all that she does, and so she'd like to create this passive environment. Maybe it's to spend more time with her kids as they're growing up, or different interests. And so you have to kind of listen to the client and where they're headed and try to guide them along with your expertise. It's kind of like a parallel journey, if you will. Yeah. What do I know? What can I share? My expertise and knowledge and experience, like I said, for the other clients, might have been a good model for that, with somebody else's desires and where they're going. And so I think when they come together, I think that's when you have a successful relationship with the client.
No, that's a great example of that. Now, I see the phrase "stand like David" in your branding. That's pretty bold and symbolic. What does that really mean for you, personally and professionally?
Okay, so my daughter and I mentioned Christy's with me in my financial practice. So we were at an investment seminar maybe a decade ago. And one of the keynote speakers was Malcolm Gladwell.
Hmm.
And he's a prolific researcher, this guy. I don't know if you've read any of his books, but he's he one of the chapters in his book, actually I think the name of his book was something about like David fighting Goliath. And it was more the background of that story. And people don't realize that. Just a quick anecdote that I remember is that King David was actually an expert with a slingshot at killing lions and bears. It says right there in the biblical literature, and that were probably attacking his flock. But what you don't realize that elsewhere in the Old Testament, there's the slingers were also in the Israelite army, but the slingers were a big part of armies. They were like the Green Berets or the commandos of their time. They could hide behind trees. So cavalry couldn't get to them. Arrows couldn't get to them. So they were a big part of standing armies. And the slingers literally could have hit Goliath almost the speed of a 45 caliber bullet with the size stone that he had. And they've done a lot of research on this. So Malcolm Gladwell has given us a story. I go, and we're at an investment seminar. But the point is that you need the right tools and weapons to be successful. And the point was, David had the right tools and weapons. His army thought you had to fight Goliath the way Goliath was fighting, with armor and a big sword. And Goliath could hardly even move. David goes, I have no problem. I've knocked down lions that are 10 times faster than this guy. Maybe you can't even compare the speed. And I can knock that guy down. There's not going to be a problem. Well, they're trying to put armor on. He said, David goes, I don't need armor. I just need to pick up a rock in the riverbed down there. I'll be fine. So David had all the confidence. Well, obviously he believed in his God and everything, but so he already had all the talents and abilities. I mean, and so once we figure out our talents and abilities, my role as a CPA then is to give you the right tools, both tax planning tools and investment planning tools, to slay your financial giants. So I use that, Malcolm. It just resonated with my daughter and I. That's going to be our theme. That's going to be our logo, because everybody's fighting against financial giants. Yeah. I mean, Wall Street, television and newscasts, and even newspapers, they're trying to sell advertising. They're not trying to sell you education. Try to learn about modern portfolio theory or academic science or Nobel Prize science and behavioral economics. You're not going to learn about that anywhere in the news media. It's rare that you get an interview on that. So we've devoted our career to go listen to those speakers and attend those seminars. What are they teaching in MBAs and finances? What are they teaching at the Chicago Booth School of Business, where it has the most Nobel Prize economic science professors from any university in the world? What are they teaching there? What are they teaching these kids? What is Eugene Fama, who's still teaching today, who won a Nobel Prize in economic science, through his work in modern portfolio theory? So we're taking these principles that nobody learns, and we're bypassing this. I call it, we're bypassing Wall Street. Let's call the metaphor for the giant is Wall Street, and I call my investors Main Street. We're just the average shepherds in the field trying to protect our flock out here, our business, our family, if you want to have that metaphor. And so there is this concept among my type of clients that is, you are the David in the world, and we're fighting against these Goliaths, and we're going to try to be your sage, your seer, your mentor along that path.
So you really, what you're creating, what I'm hearing, is financial assassins. You find out what they have and you optimize the assets they have. And just like David, he wasn't focusing on, King Saul tried to give him, hey, take my armor. Like, what are you doing? Crazy. You can't go out there, and kind of in your, whatever he was wearing at that point, you need to have my armor on. And he's like going, no, listen, I don't need any of that. And not only, as you mentioned, he believed the God, that was all powerful, but he also was certain of himself because he understood what he had and he understood how to use those tools. And I think what I'm hearing you is that's what you're trying to do with your clients. You're trying to help them to really take what they have and kind of help them with the best optimized version of what it is that they can go and do with it, and going, as you mentioned, somebody does real estate. Well, let's figure out how we can go and optimize that. Don't go and say, well, hold on, you're doing real estate. No. Go to, you should put everything into the stock market because that's what everybody else does. No, what I'm hearing from you, what you're able to do with the strategies is saying, hey, let's figure out where you're at. What do you have? And let's figure out how we can go and optimize that. So it gives you, again, what is it that you want? Where is the future that you want to build, right? And kind of help them with that.
Yeah, when you could figure out your client's strengths and what makes them the most successful, and you could pivot that same strength and ability, whether it's a certain physical skill they have or a certain knowledge that they have, if you can pivot that into helping them build their wealth, it's going to be a win-win. They've already done it, usually through their career, whether they're a W-2 employee in some career or even their self-employed business. They've already done it. And so that's a skill that takes experience. You just, I didn't develop that over time in one meeting at a seminar with Malcolm Gladwell, but over time you learn those skill sets and you help your clients along that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like the name and you did write the book Slay Your Financial Giant. So what was it about? Like why did you write it? Like what was the purpose as far as for writing the book itself?
So my wife and I were really in a financial bind, a lot of debt, not spending money properly. In fact, when you go to college, they basically teach you how to leverage debt. I think that the credit card companies probably sponsor a lot of your business programs in college. So I was fortunate. I had a multi-millionaire client back in 2010. He told my wife and I, Barbara, he says, you guys need to take Financial Peace University. I'm hosting it. My wife and I are hosting Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey. And I'd kind of heard about them. At that time, when Fox Business News was first starting, there was only 2 people on it all day long, like 12 hours of Dave Ramsey and 12 hours of Neil Cavuto. Yeah. And so, now Fox Business News has morphed into, a wholly never, it's not even there anymore, Fox Business News, actually. But it kind of is. I think they have Maria Bartiromo. But anyway, so we took this Financial Peace University. I kind of heard of Dave Ramsey. I had done some other programs through my local church. They had a program called Christian Financial Concepts by a gentleman who's passed away. He was actually the first person I ever heard that talked about biblical principles in money, and that was Larry Burkett. He passed on. And then there was another guy named Howard Dayton. He founded something called Crown Ministries. And then there was a guy named Ron Blue. He started something called Kingdom Advisors. So I thought, I kind of always grew up in this Christian household environment, but I always kind of liked, well, what is the wisdom from Scripture? It doesn't, you could be a Buddhist or an atheist or an agnostic or anything, but there's wisdom in a lot of the religious literature in the world. And I thought that the Bible would be a good place to look for that wisdom. And when Dave Ramsey was teaching his class, and here's a guy who's also been mentored by multimillionaires. And so if my multi-millionaire client is telling me to do something, Barbara wanted to come with me on that. So we did this thing for 13 weeks back then. Now you do it 9 weeks online. But after that class in 2010, I said, I need to write a book now. And it took me more than a decade to get there, because along the way I went and got a master's in biblical theology just so I'd have some knowledge about that subject. And along with my other licenses in expanding, and along with taking that same year is when Christy and I decided to switch financial co-advisors to a company that actually taught and focused on modern portfolio theory and modern economic science. And that founder of that company also had an epiphany going to an investment seminar when he saw a debate between, I might have been between Eugene Fama, Nobel Prize economic science winner, and a founder of one of the mutual fund companies. So they were having a debate, active versus passive, active versus passive. And even he came out of that meeting saying, I can't sell mutual funds anymore if they're on an active strategy. So anyways, long story short there is that after that Financial Peace University, and after I took this journey a decade later, I took 40 years of knowledge, nearly 40 years of knowledge. And I finally figured out that I can get my knowledge expressed in 10 financial commandments. So I took 10 concepts. I was referred to a book company. I would have to say that I'm grateful for the work that I got from Expert Press, they were, I'm just reading from the front of my book now, but anyways, they were fantastic. They helped me. It literally took almost a year for me to have all my concepts in outline form, and then spoken form, and then written form, and then finally getting this book. But I feel I have 10 years or 40 years of in these 10 financial concepts that I feel have been transformative in my client's life. And I wanted to get it in writing so that clients could have something, instead of just meeting with me all the time, have something to reflect on. And by the way, Christy did the same thing. So if you want to go to our website, Christy's book is there too. But I just felt that a good peace of mind after I got these concepts out. And now when I'm talking to clients, I can refer to different chapters in the book, different parts of the financial 10 commandments. And I can say, I think you need this part. Because I even borrow some of Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps on his financial peace journey, because he really focuses on getting people on a spending plan or a budget, getting out of debt, and starting to build the wealth. That's kind of where he focuses. And then we take it the next step. Once you've gotten out of debt and start building your wealth, then what do you do? And we kind of, so I blend both of those ideas together in the 10 financial commandments that I talk about in the book. And everybody's a different journey on this financial peace walk, if you will. And so I kind of try to see where you're at and kind of guide you in that direction, and plug you into my book somewhere in there so you can have a takeaway. Because it's not written to be a textbook; it's written for clients to learn something from.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're mentioning, what really is the big thing, is that pretty well everything in life has certain principles. And if you understand the principles, everything comes back. The best one I use, listen, it doesn't matter if you're tall, short, slim, fat, whatever. Gravity works for everybody the same way. You go on top of a building, you leap off of it, you're only going to go one way. You're not suddenly going to sprung wings and fly away. Nobody has done that, right? So I think in the same thing in finances, what I'm hearing you say, like, hey, you went and studied these principles. You're like going, hey, let's go and focus on the principles because they do not change. And I think this is where the challenge is sometimes, where people go and they focus more on the tactics, right? And it's like, no, but tactics change. Like, you know what? The whole idea of what happens, depending on what's happened, like even in the market and all of this stuff. But if you go and build, and again, going back to another biblical principle, right? That build your house on a solid rock, not on sand. Kind of that whole idea. If you build it on principles, and that's what it sounds like you have put into this book, are good, solid foundational principles for somebody, if they follow, right? They're going to be able to go and have success.
Yeah, and it's just like I'll go back to Dave Ramsey because I consider he was a mentor of mine. In fact, Christy and I both have gone through the financial counselor training that he offers. It's a 40-hour online program now, and plus I also attended the live one back in the day when they used to offer these live classes back in Franklin, Tennessee. I attended that one too. But so yeah, you're right. So Dave Ramsey's interviewed in his most recent book about millionaires, over 10,000 millionaires, and he's getting these basic principles. So what are the common themes of a person that becomes a millionaire? And literally almost 80% of them didn't inherit any wealth or very little wealth. I mean, these millionaires are self-made. You're not just, it's very rare that people inherit a lot of money and that's the way they made all their wealth.
And often, listen, if they do, they usually find a way how to disinherit that money very quickly.
because they don't have the basic principles. They don't have the knowledge how to keep it. You're right. They in fact, that's also true of people that have done studies of sports athletes. These young men and women get these big bonuses out of college. They get into some professional sport, and some of them don't do this, but a lot of them just become broke. Yeah. And they just become,
people winning the lottery.
Not good. It's not good to give people a bunch of money. Lottery winners also, studies done on that. They just destroy their lives. They don't, so
they become broker. That's right. How do you become more broke than you were before when you were broke? Like, how does that make sense? But again, it's because they don't understand the fact that, what most of us, if we lived in, like middle class and not around money, and like you mentioned, a lot of the millionaires, well, they had to learn principles. They had to, through life, they learn these things, how to go and manage money. And it's a way of thinking. And I always talk about it this way, like there is this red world, where that's kind of like the world of a little bit of a scarcity and people are working there. There are certain rules that are in this world, and there is this world of abundance, the blue world. Well, if you suddenly get transformed from the red world into the blue world, and you're still using the principles or the way of thinking from this world in here, you're not going to survive. And that's what happens with a lot of people. But people that have actually came through and learned the lessons and principles, and they came to the money because they worked through it into this, they will actually go and keep it. Even though a lot of people that have, I've a lot of business owners that are millionaires now, usually it was like their second or third business that actually they were able to go and make it again, because those are all of those lessons. So if you're somebody that kind of comes into money, and I think this is where the danger is with people inheriting a whole bunch of money, that can become detrimental when they don't know how to go and deal with it. And again, this is where knowing and studying those principles becomes really, really important.
And it's not just inheritance. We deal with women that their spouses have passed away and they've taken care of the finances their whole life, and they're just overwhelmed. We deal with clients that are going through divorce. And once again, their spouse kept them in the dark about the money. They raised the kids. And so the female in that environment just doesn't have any clue what's going on. And they're afraid. So there's all however they come onto this sudden shift in life from the red world of not managing money to the blue world of having to manage money. So yeah, and another way to use that analogy, and I mentioned in my book, is mindset. So there's a scarcity mindset and abundance mindset, and
no, that's the two worlds. That's
exactly. And Carol
thing.
Dweck, professor at Stanford, actually wrote a book on mindset. I even quote that in my book, and she teaches a class on that at Stanford, and it's fascinating the way we're brought up in terms of how we look at these different things. And so, yeah, good point.
Yeah, no, that's so. In your view, what's kind of the biggest financial challenge that your clients are facing, right now as you're meeting with them? Because as we go through time, and you've been in the business long enough, I think the principles are still the same, the challenges are the same, but I think now there is a lot more pressure with everything else that's going on. So when you're kind of dealing with clients right now, what is kind of the biggest, kind of financial challenge that you see most often?
Yeah, I would say just like my client that left earlier today, and most of the clients that were coming in prior to this near October 15th deadline this year, is that a lot of them are successful. But what they fail to realize, they fail to take the balance of their success, and they fail to look at the tax picture first. So and I think that's where my skill set and our office skill set comes into play here, is that yes, it's true. You're very successful this year. You came into all this wealth. You did a great job. But then they maybe make the mistake of putting $150,000 into their house remodel, and they don't get a home equity line, and they forget the fact that some of that $150,000 belongs to Uncle Sam. And so I think the biggest mistake that I see clients in recent life making is that let's look at the tax picture. Let's determine how we could reduce the tax picture if we still have time. Obviously, it's better to do it before year end. So now we're going to be coming up onto the year end of 2025. And so now we can do planning before year end. After year end, you're limited on what you can do. So do planning now on the success that you've had. Let's figure out how we can reduce the tax impact, what we have to do to reduce it. Then let's take a look at the money for your lifestyle. Let's put that aside. Let's not forget that everybody has a lifestyle. And so we tend not to think about what our lifestyle is. And now we have this excess. Is it going to go into a pension plan? Is it going to go into a charitable remainder trust? Is it going to go into the next down payment for real estate? What is it going to do now? So we've got these buckets of money, if you will, the tax bucket, the lifestyle bucket, and then the future wealth building bucket. And I think where people, they get them, they either don't think about those, or they get them cross mixed, or they don't think about it at all. I think that's where that people need to stop and pause before they start spending this money. I've got $150,000 in the bank. I might as well just go spend. No, pause, time out. Let's look at the buckets of money. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you need to do? And I think that's where the biggest mistake is. They fail to realize that money has different needs and resources, especially the tax bucket that's going to come up there.
Well, I think you mentioned something, and often when I'm doing the show with financial advisors, I do tend to speak negatively about CPAs and accountants, and you just kind of brought it up. Why? Because most of them deal with the compliance in the new year with the previous year. Well, at that point, you can't really do anything. What I'm hearing, dude, what makes you different, you're like, oh no, hey, let's sit down right now, like October, let's start planning. Is there something we can do before the end of the year so that we can go and make sure we reduce the amount of tax that you pay? Because yeah, once January 1st comes over, game over for a previous year. You can't really do much at that point. So it's really important to go and do a little bit more of that planning ahead of time and being strategic about the amount of tax that that you pay. So that, am I getting that right? That's kind of where
Yeah.
you,
So
you're different.
when I got my CPA license, I worked at 4 different firms to get the required hours and education experience you had to have, and almost every CPA firm I've either worked out or dealt with, they're very transactional in nature. Everybody thinks that it's somebody else's job to do the planning. Well, maybe it's a stockbroker's job. Well, maybe it's, the CPAs that I know rarely are involved in the planning side. And that's why I think I like the focus of the way our career has gone in our practice, is that we're not trying to be the transactional, do as many tax returns as we can CPA firm, because that's you're right. That's the one that happens. So come March or April, or somebody on extension come, the summertime, that's when they figure out they wish they would have done something different. But whose job is it to do this planning? And there's not that many certified financial planners around either. So really that's the skill set that brings taxes and retirement planning and investing planning together, that particular license skill set and the experience that you get from doing that. But it is important for people to recognize that there's going to be a problem if they don't bring that other discipline, whether you do somebody like me that has both of them, or you have a team that's made up of a certified financial planner along with your tax preparer. But you gotta recognize that that's a big issue here. Yeah.
I think what most people don't realize, that actually taxes is probably the biggest, one of the biggest expenses that somebody's going to have. Right. I actually say taxes is the second biggest. The number one biggest is not knowing something. That's already costing you whatever it is that you want to go and get. So lack of knowledge is a huge expense. Sometimes it's way bigger, but taxes is definitely right there, because, people don't realize that, the tax code has been written in a way that actually enables you to go and manage your finances. And I talk about taxes. There's kind of like red lights, and then there's the go lights or the green lights. And the red lights is what you just mentioned, what most CPAs kind of do. It's more compliance, more making sure, hey, you made the money last year, you got to go and pay the tax. Where the go lights is now, hey, how can we go and talk about strategies that the IRS doesn't really advertise very well, or often they don't advertise? But this is where you can go in and now have and start using different strategies. And you mentioned some of them at the beginning, trust and different things that you can go and set up your finances that is actually beneficial for your finances. And again, this is where that knowledge comes in, and having somebody working with you that does have that awareness. And let's figure that out before the end of the year, because next year we can't do anything about the previous year.
Yeah. And I think my role, since we mentioned I've been doing this for more than 40 years, my role now, I love doing the planning with clients, as you could tell in this conversation. And also my role is education of my own team and staff. So even though I work with another CPA and a enrolled agent, I have a team of 8 of us here. We also need to pass on to the next generation as much knowledge as we can. So I pass on my knowledge through my book and through my discussions and meeting with clients, but I also pass it on to my team and my staff. And I make sure that we meet every week and talk about problems that clients are having, problems that we may be having, and also a learning opportunity for some area. So it's important, I think, when you get away from just a single man shop, which might even close up after tax season, you'll never talk to that guy again, that you have other people in your office. They may not know the answer to everything, but it's important, I think, that they know what your firm can do. They may not have all the licenses and experience, but even my daughter, who's securities licensed, she doesn't do any taxes, but she knows, she has all the licenses I have, but she doesn't do tax preparation. But she knows this side of the business, so she knows what we do. So we have to bring clients together and get the big picture going. So a lot of my staff nowadays, they're just, hey, I think you need to meet with Trent after you get this done. You need it. Yeah. So that's why the whole fourth quarter we'll be dealing with planning issues, as you said. That's before December 31st. So no,
that's great. Now, when you think about legacy, what do you want your work and your life to really stand for? I mean, you've got the book, you've done several things, but where do you kind of see yourself moving from here and leaving the legacy that you're building?
Yeah, so there's many hats I wear. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a grandfather. And plus, I'm also the head of this firm, both on the financial services side and the CPA side. And as I mentioned, we have 8 employees, but I also have 10 grandchildren and 4 kids, and a wife of nearly 50 years. I grew up. My father was a coach, but he always wanted to be the best version of himself he went to. So I remember being dragged along to all these coaching seminars he went to, and trying to be a better coach and a better teacher of youth and sports. And so it was amazing just even having some guys that he coached in high school that came to his funeral, and people I talk to this day that, God, your dad was such a great teacher and mentor. And so I also learned from him, but I also learned growing up from in Southern California from following UCLA basketball, John Wooden, another one. And I actually have John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, which most people never heard of, in my book. And the Pyramid of Success, in a nutshell, if you talk to any of his players, whether it's Bill Walton, who's passed on now, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor back in those days, if you talk to any of his players, he would say he taught us more about life and how to be successful in life than he did about basketball. But yet the guy who's like, 13 NCAA championships, including like 6 or 7 or 8 in a row. So I liked his teaching, and he said, this is in a nutshell, to paraphrase, he says, become the best version of yourself. So try to strive in your daily life to just become the best version of yourself. Yes, there's things you can do, whether it's your faith walk, or whether it's the way you take care of your health, or your eating, or your knowledge, or your mind, all these things, mindset. So become the best version of yourself, and then share that with other people. And so he did that, I do that. And so I think that I want my grandkids and my kids to say, and my wife to say, and my clients to say, and my staff to say, yeah, Trent taught us to become the best version of ourselves. And if I can have that on my headstone, I think that would be a good legacy to leave.
No, John, what a great, mentor, and what he has gone. And again, it was all about principles. And he won all those championships probably because he focused on what is the important part. Not going out there and just trying to win all the time, but getting your life in order and making sure that you focus on the important things, so that when you are on the court, you're on the court. You're not somewhere else thinking about other stuff. And I think this is often what happens even with finances, where things just get so, commingled and kind of messed up for a lot of people, and they don't really truly understand what that is. So like when we're on, let's talk about retirement a little bit. Like retirement means many things to many different people, but in your experience, what truly makes a meaningful retirement?
Yeah. So in my 40 years experience, that was another one of the chapters in my book that I share with people. Everybody has their own definition of the money. Now, there have been a number of studies, and I mentioned a couple in my book, that talk about different levels of income that give us some peace of mind. In other words, it doesn't mean, even the Bible talks about there's always going to be the poor among us. I'm not saying that you have to be poor, but there's always going to be the wealthy among us too. I'm not saying you have to be the wealthiest, but somewhere between being poor and wealthy, you're going to reach a comfort level on where you've gotten your debts paid off and your bills. I think that's an ultimate good goal for retirement. Or if you have enough cash flow and reserves that you don't mind having a little, what I call good debt, or debt that's leveraged maybe in your real estate investments. That's what I call good debt. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you have the reserves. So you're getting this level of income, and depending on where you're at in the world, in the United States or whatever, it's now you have this. You don't feel burdened. You don't feel like the next paycheck. You need the next paycheck to get through the next month, as Dave Ramsey would say, that there's too much month left at the end of the money. So we don't want to be there in retirement. So I think retirement, you're right. I think it's a different definition for everybody, but I think that ultimately you're going to want to get out of debt, and you're going to want to have enough passive income to where you feel comfortable. Your monthly obligations, and maybe the excess you're giving to church or charity. Maybe the excess you're helping kids and grandkids still. Maybe the excess you're you're saving to pass on and a legacy to your next generation. But you are right. There's a different level for it, but there is some level of income where you're going to feel that internally, where you have that peace of mind about it. And that's why I would always refer back to that peace of mind. But I talk about that in my book. They have different studies on it, and each of the studies have their own results in terms of that level. But I think it is a flexible number, but there definitely is a process there and an event once you've gotten out of debt that you feel this comfort level.
And again, everybody's kind of going to be a little bit different, but again, it just comes down to, hey, where you're at, where do you want to go? And retirement often means, there are some people that like, hey, listen, you know what, in retirement, I've been always out of the house. I never spent any time in the house. And I've heard these stories from people say, I'm just going to sit on my couch and watch TV because that's what I want to do because I didn't have a chance to do that when I was working, right? That's going to be way different than somebody says, hey, you know what, I want to go on a trip around the world every 2 to 3 years or going and doing traveling and all that stuff. Well, that's going to take different resources, different planning, and essentially different plan, right? So that's really where the difference, is. So if some of the listeners are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of the things that are happening, like, they're from the perspective of, wanting to go and get their finances in order even maybe, or planning for that retirement, what would kind of be the first step that you'd encourage them to take?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I would tell everybody that has not done it yet to go online to Financial Peace University and take Dave Ramsey's 9 units or 9 lessons on financial peace. And then I think that it's not going to be rocket science, but he is going to plant some seeds. Every client that's ever done that with me, and I've been, like I said, since 2010, I've been referring clients to do this, whether they're the wealthiest clients. I remember one of my multimillionaire clients has sold his business for $40 million. He told me, nobody's ever talked to me the way you talk to me. I said, yeah, because you're stupid with your money, So people were afraid to talk to him because I guess they were afraid of losing him as a client. I said, I don't care if I lose you as a client. I said, you're dumb. So you need to change your mental outlook on what you're doing with your money. So you can have a lot of money and feel broke, or you can have a little bit of money and feel rich. So it just depends. So I think that the basics, you could go, I don't even know of a university program that'll give you the lessons that Dave Ramsey will give you in financial peace. I really don't. And I have a lot of degrees. I have a lot of licenses. I have a lot of continuing education, and it's a rare program that'll take those 9 lessons and consolidate it into a thought process that's simple. You want a simple thought process that gives you 9 steps to financial freedom and success? I think that's a start. You asked me for a start, and I think you'll get enough direction in those 9 lessons. Which, like I said, you could do it online, and you could probably get it done in a week if you wanted to.
No, that's a great advice. Yeah, no, and about when I was an advisor, we were actually teaching that with my business partner at a church, Financial Peace University, and going through that. So no, that's a great advice. And I think where it comes down to, I was surprised you kind of brought something up with one of your clients. I remember having a client where she was managing like a $3 million budget at work, but when it comes to the personal finance, like how to balance a checkbook and all that stuff, completely. And I'm like, how can this be where at work, you're dealing with this amount of money, but your personal finances are in completely mess, and you're bringing up business owners and that basically their personal finance were in mess, but they're, running this business. So I think this is where it comes down to, again, having those principles, having those basic ways of how to go and manage something. And again, like you said, really simple. If you don't understand the basic principles of it, it's going to be very difficult, to get into it. And I think this is the challenge a lot of. And you brought that up with students. I think the credit card companies are like giving all of these loans and credit cards to students where they don't have an income. Like they're going to use the credit card as a passive income, then not realizing that they have to go and pay for it. And I've met with so many people where they're like, oh, you know what? I've got this money. I've got, $20,000. I want to go and invest. And the first question was always like, okay, do you have any debt on credit cards? Yeah, I do, but I want to have this investment. I'm like going, you need to realize that if you pay off the credit card where you got 10,000, you're getting a 20% rate of return guaranteed. You can't go and do that anywhere else. But if you pay off the credit card, just like Dave Ramsey would say, you got to go and cut it because there is no point of paying it off and racking it back up again because you're going to be in the same place. And now, you've just wasted that money, where maybe that money sitting in an investment where you can't touch it might be better. but now you're not really managing your money properly because you're losing this 20% on this money already, and it would be better off, paying it off than putting it somewhere into an investment where, you know what, yeah, even if you get 10%, you're still behind, right? So
Yeah, and you actually mentioned something. You said you were involved with your church doing Financial Peace University. I probably have taught, I've been a host of maybe 20 different Financial Peace Universities. There's a business in town. They used to host for all their employees. It was a large business. Right in their conference room, they would host and pay for Financial Peace University for all their employees. I probably a half a dozen churches in my local area here. I've done it, but nowadays there's not as many churches offering it. And David Ramsey's company has made it really easy for people, no matter where they're listening to this podcast, anywhere in the world, actually, for around $100, you can log on and take these 9 lessons. And I tell you right now, as you know, since you did this, hosted this, the lessons are fun, they're funny, they're entertaining, but you're learning something. So it's not like you're sitting in a lecture. So just to let people know, and they're all about an hour long, 9 lessons. So do that. And even if you're a multimillionaire that's never taken it, I think you're going to get some pretty good takeaways out of that.
When we were doing this at the church, it was like the people that were taking it, they were already managing their money well. And, when you talk about wealthy people, and this was kind of a bit of a stigma on it, like the people that we were working with, we knew what their finances were, and we were trying to tell them, go and take this course. It's going to help you. And they were wealthy. They had money, but now they felt embarrassed. Like they felt like, oh, I can't go in there. So, there was kind of like a bit of that whole idea that, if you have money, somehow people just assume that you're supposed to know everything. And I think that's where a lot of people that sometimes are wealthy do make some silly mistakes that you're like kind of shaking your head going like, what were you thinking when you were doing this, So,
yeah.
No, it's interesting. So as we're coming to the end here, I've got these 4 questions. I call them the rapid fire question. So the first question is what's a favorite book that, really shaped your thinking?
Well, I would have to say the Bible. Like I said, even though I grew up in a Christian household, I didn't really feel like I learned anything from it. I just felt like, oh, they're just saying these words out there. But when Dave Ramsey did that financial peace class, and Larry Burkett, I mentioned him in Christian Financial Concepts, when they started linking together the wisdom of Scripture with how you live your life. And among how you live your life, there's the subset of how you live your financial life, which is the gift that God gave me. So if you start from that wisdom, and that's why in my book, I take the modern view, I'll call it the Wall Street, Main Street view, and I compare that against the Jerusalem view. So throughout my book, I have David in the Psalms and Solomon in Proverbs and a few other Old Testament scriptures. I decided to focus on those 2 protagonists from Old Testament scripture because you're going to get, as Zig Ziglar once said, I read 2 things every day, the Wall Street Journal to see what man has to say about things, and I read the Bible to see what God has to say about what man's saying about things. So, and Zig Ziglar is probably one of the more successful business consultants that there's ever been in our lifetime. But so I would say that I would start with my learning scripture. And that's also what prompted me to get a master's in biblical theology, is that I wanted to write a book and I don't want to make it sound like a bunch of Bible verses just spitting out. I wanted to have some theology behind them.
Yeah. Well, put it that way. The Bible, I'm going to tell you right now, is the #1 book that everybody mentions on the show. So you're a new company. That's always great. And you mentioned something, there is a difference between knowledge and wisdom. And I love this example that I've heard from somebody. They said, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting tomatoes into your fruit salad. So that's a bit of a difference from there. So what's one morning habit or routine that you swear by or that you do?
Yeah, I this morning was one of my habits there. So I've been going to a physical fitness boot camp for 15 years now. And my boot camp is about 30 minutes from my house. I drive over there. It's a former Marine drill instructor. I'll have a shout out to Manny Ramos. I gave it in my book to him. Go to his website. The guy's just been a lifesaver for me. Literally, if you look at scripture, this sack of bones and flesh we live in is a temple. And if you think about it that way, you should be taking care of it. And so that's the morning routine I have. I try to work out at least 4 mornings a week.
Oh, that's awesome. What's one bucket list item that you haven't done yet?
I haven't yet paid off all my debt. So as a 70-year-old man, I'm working on on getting that done. But I have a plan. I'm on my own plan to get there, my own financial peace journey. So I think that, and I'm not worried about it. There was a point in my life where our income did exceed our expenses, and raising 4 kids is always a difficult chore, especially if you live on either the West Coast of the United States, the East or the West Coast. It's expensive. The middle of America is a little less expensive to live in, but yeah, I would say that that's still on my bucket list to get done.
Awesome. What's a hobby or interest that really recharges you?
I love sports. Like I said, I grew up in a household, a father that was a coach and a sports person, and I like all sports. I was fortunate a couple of weeks ago, my 16-year-old grandson in Spokane, Washington, had a fundraiser for a sports program. I sponsored the foursome. I told my son and grandson who played with me, I said, look, our goal last year, we got 20th out of 25. Our goal this year is to get 20 in the top 10. So I'm like I'm pushing my son and my grandson and our other foursome member. And so I have another grandson. He's going to be coming tomorrow night, spending the night at the house. He's 11 years old. He's going to watch the Dodger game with me. And I've been taking him to Dodger games since he was 3. So he's like, he made All-Stars last year, and he was, COVID kind of shut him down for a couple of years, but he finally played majors and made All-Stars. And so I love watching my kids and grandkids play sports. I love participating with them. And I think that's also going back to that health journey, is being able to, be healthy enough. It's one thing just living a long time. Yeah. It's another thing we call in life, they call health span. Are you going to be healthy when you're 80 or 90? Yeah. Are you going to be able to do anything besides, have a walker and a wheelchair? And I'm not putting that down, but I'm saying everybody's going to die. I'm just saying you got to do something along the way. So I would say
it's the quality of life that you're going to have when you get to that age, and being that age and living longer is not that good if you're, spending 90% of the time in a bed because you can't move, right? So
it's not just watching sports I enjoy, especially my kids and grandkids, but I also like participating with them.
Yeah, perfect. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, here's what I call the hot question, is the last question. Fast forward to the end of your life and imagine that everyone forgot everything that you have ever taught or showed them. But they do remember that one last message from you. What would you want that one message be?
I would say, do everything in your life that you can to be the best version of yourself that God meant you to be.
That's awesome. That's great. Wow, what a powerful and perspective-shifting conversation, Trent. Thank you for sharing your journey, your frameworks, and your heart. Where can people find out more about you and the work that you do and about your book?
I would say if you can go to benedettifinancial.com, you can see my podcast where I've been interviewed about my book. They're very informative because it's not reading my book. It's actually the podcast about it. You can also get access to my daughter Christy's and my book, where it give you some basic information what we're about. But you could also set up a free 15-minute appointment if you want to get a consultation started on maybe how we can offer some input about your financial peace journey.
That's awesome. Perfect. So if you're listening, be sure to check out Trent's website, benedettifinancial.com, and the tools, the books that he created to really help you design a meaningful, financial, peaceful future. Trent, thank you again for your time and your message. And remember, making life less taxing isn't just about money. It's about the freedom, clarity, and purpose. Keep building wealth, keep protecting your legacy, and keep living the untaxable lifestyle. We'll see you next time on the Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Make Life Less Taxing podcast. Be sure to check out our other top advisor interviews at makelifalesstaxingpodcast.com.